Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Aimstone channel. Today, I had a great conversation with Dan Faber. Dan Faber is a former dentist practitioner. Then he sold his business and transitioned fully into Bitcoin. In this interview, we will speak about how he got into Bitcoin, why Bitcoin in the first place, economy, US dollar history, banking, and other topics. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I am with Dan Faber. He is a dentist by practice, and of course, he Bitcoiner. Dan, how you doing?
All right, how you doing?
I'm
Thanks for
doing
having
well,
me.
thank you.
It's great to be here, and I did request to say, hey, what's up, guys? Because I love hearing that. But it's like my signal that the
you,
video's
you,
on.
you
So
want to start again?
no, it's all good.
All right, all right. I mean, we can start again if you want.
No. It's
All
your
right.
it's your it's your it's your line. You got to stick with it. I love hearing it though.
Okay, Dan, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into Bitcoin in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, 2017, 18, my friend was just talking about it. I think he had bought a couple, it was on Coinbase. He bought some Bitcoin and got to talking about it. I think I just like on a whim just bought some, a little bit and I started looking into it, researching it, and it really the philosophy and the ethos kind of stuck with me, and I kind of just kept on researching, reading, listening, hearing. It's really interesting perspectives from different types of people, and more and more, obviously, lots of other people went down the rabbit hole. Institutional investors, private investors. Just it's just a really interesting field and an interesting. I guess we'll call it an instrument. Um, kind of an instrument that's never really existed before. Everybody always compares it to gold, digital gold, but it truly is a asset with properties that not many assets really can show. And when it comes to investing, I like to look into brands. It's tough sometimes to like see the actual internal workings of a company or an investment or even an asset. Bitcoin actually is pretty good at looking into its internal workings because it's right there, right? You look at the coin metrics, you look at the what's going on chain. So in that sense, you can see a lot. But other types of investments, like companies, you can only see so much. They only tell you so much, and you really can't see the inner workings. So I like to kind of look at like what's the brand, like I just to not has nothing to do with dentistry, but in terms of a practice, I had a practice, and a practice you're basically developing a brand because in essence, from a patient's perspective, a dentist is a dentist, even though that's not really true. Um, that's how people see it. So you really do have to develop your own brand, your own user experience, and brand really matters. So kind of that stuck with me. And when I look at other investments now, I look at really like I look at the brand. And when you look at it from the perspective of just brand, Bitcoin is like I don't know, it's got to be the fastest growing brand I've ever seen. And when you talk about Bitcoin, people think of Bitcoin kind of ubiquitously or synonymously with crypto. Like when they hear crypto, most people hear crypto, Bitcoin,
Yep,
they don't know the difference, right? Unless you
FTX.
start. Yeah, exactly. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So and to some extent, the ETFs and all that is it's kind of breeding that, right? People are, it's kind of playing off the narrative that Bitcoin is the biggest. It is kind of crypto, and this is a good way to step into investing into crypto. So that's kind of my 2 cents, if you will.
Right. Actually, I was in the gym maybe a few weeks ago, and I had my t-shirt like Josh Hodl, and one guy asked me, "What is it?" I said, "It's about Bitcoin." And he said, "Oh, this is about the FTX thing." I'm like, "No, it's a totally different thing." But
Right.
he did not want to hear it, so he thought it's like all BS, all scam. But yeah, people cannot really distinguish between cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Those are two totally different animals.
Totally. I mean, just to give a perspective too about like the perspective of like I asked my dad. My dad's 83, right? So, but he's been an investor his whole life, and he's pretty good. But when just as a joke, I said, "Oh, Dad, you see the 11 ETFs were just approved?" And he's like, when are you making your investment?" He's just like looked at me like, "I'm not investing in Bitcoin." And I think that says a lot about how investors are. Like I guess you call him a boomer. I guess from when he was born, but the new generation coming up are going to be the ones who are, comfortable with digital. And when they start investing their hard-earned money, to a larger degree, that generation coming up, I think that's when you're really going to see that increase investment into Bitcoin and the ETFs. So like, they're definitely not going to know the word hodl. They're not going to know those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
He asked me, what does that mean? Is this like a misspelled word or something? I'm like, no, it's supposed.
I think it actually did start as I think that's how it
Yeah,
came, right? It was a
yeah, that's how it
misspelled.
came. Yes,
Someone write hold and then they mixed it up and then they just
hodl. Yes.
made an anagram out of it. Which I
Yeah,
wonder,
but
did you know who got credit for that? I don't know who.
I think it
Somebody.
was, yeah, it was very early days, maybe 2011, 2012, somewhere else. I think they wrote on the Reddit or somewhere or some Bitcoin forum. Yeah, he
Right.
said instead of like hold, he wrote hodl, and then since then it was a thing, which is I like hodl. It sounds great.
Yeah, no, it's a cool word. It has its own. I mean, that's the other interesting thing. It has it's confusing for people too because it doesn't fit into like everybody says. It starts with the people and then it kind of has gone to institutional investing, which is usually it's the other way around.
Right.
And now it has its own glossary. It has its own lingo. It has its own terminology, and then Wall Street kind of has to catch up to understanding that. But it's interesting to see like watch. I don't really watch mainstream
Yeah,
finance news, but you'll see things like they'll mention the word hodl and all this,
yeah,
like they're
exactly.
saying some cool keyword,
I
and
think, yeah, one of the ETFs, I believe it's Bitwise or some other ETF, the ticker symbol is HODL, which is quite cool.
yeah, that's pretty cool. But people probably don't,
I don't
they
understand
probably
what it means. Yeah.
won't get it right. They'll be like, what? Why is your symbol like that? Why is it here like that?
So then,
That's cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
then, so you are a dentist as a practice. Do you have like one practice or like multiple practices?
So I kind of have an unusual career, and I'm not the typical kind of personality and temperament to be a dentist. It just kind of I was always a science guy in school, and I kind of just not fell into it, but I wanted to be in healthcare. I kind of means a lot in terms of helping people and that kind of thing. That meant something to me. And I looked into dentistry and medicine, and I kind of just fell into dentistry and went to school for it, obviously, and started a practice and did all that kind of stuff. But um, most dentists are kind of like these meticulous little focused on detail kind of thing. And I can be detail oriented, but I'm more big picture, more entrepreneurial. I like
Mm,
to kind of think outside the box. And, dentistry can be kind of mind numbing after a while in that sense. So I actually sold my practice several years ago. But I stayed kind of in and around the field. I invest. I've done some consulting. I've done some teaching and things like that. So I still and I have a degree in public health, which kind of gives me focus and direction, even when it comes to investing. And I even have like a Bitcoin perspective about how Bitcoin could impact public health. So it's like there's actually lots of tie-ins. So I'm not really currently, I don't do a ton of clinical dentistry as much anymore. I dabble here and there, but mostly I'm focused on kind of like more of like a blend of impact investing and traditional investing, and obviously Bitcoin and crypto. Less other
Bitcoin
crypto,
mostly.
more Bitcoin. Yeah.
I was about to ask you if you did not say you sold your practice. I was about to ask if you put some Bitcoin on your balance sheet, but no.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if practices are doing that. I should write that down and look into that. That'd be an interesting thing, putting Bitcoin on your balance sheet. Practices balance sheets are probably it's a lot of money going in and out. It's a lot of
Yeah.
overhead. So I don't know if that makes a ton of sense for them. But that's pretty funny. But I've seen things like a life insurance a Bitcoin based life insurance company come about and had a chat with them. I think they're kind of in the startup phase, but there's all things like that coming about where it's insurance denominated in Bitcoin. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of that kind of stuff in the years to come.
Yep, hopefully. So then, going to ETF, as you know, as you said, 11 spot Bitcoin ETF have been approved on January 10. Today was January 23, but if you take a trading days, it's been so today is the eighth trading day. And as
Yeah.
you can see, Bitcoin is down by more than 20% from like all-time high, local high, like
Yep.
49K to like $39,000. And what do you think is going on? Why Bitcoin is selling off?
I mean, I kind of have a long-term thesis on Bitcoin. I tend not to look at I mean, I see it day to day, but I'm not reacting day to day.
Yeah, that's a good
I
idea.
think I yeah. I mean, that's what hodling is, right?
Yep.
You hold on and you don't, I add here and there, when the pricing makes sense to me, but I don't really, don't really sell it. I'm not trading it, right? I'm investing in it, and
Yep.
that, those are two obviously different things to me. But when it comes to why ETFs are why the price is coming down, I just think it's
Grayscale.
normal. Yeah, I mean, there's the grayscale thing. I mean, they're speculating on all this, why it's happening. I mean, I think, there is a lot of inflow, but there's
A lot of
trading going
outflows. Yep.
on. Yeah, I just think it's going to be the big picture is I think it's going to be a slow movement towards with inflows. I don't think, I mean, don't forget, Bitcoin's a global asset, right? It's not
Yep.
just, it's the only real true global asset. I mean, you could say gold is to some extent, but um, there's the rest of the world too. Kind of. I know the U.S. Has a probably the one of the larger markets from a financial perspective, but I just think it's going to be a trickle in. I think Bitcoin is going to kind of behave like it normally does. I guess how it's going to behave, you know, regardless of the ETFs that are
Yep.
offered. I mean, there has been inflow. There has been a lot of inflow, but it just kind of is what it is.
If you take a look at the grayscale outflow, I think the asset under management pre-Bitcoin spot ETF was around 28 billion. Now it's 22 billion. So we saw like 6 billion outflow in the past 8 trading days, which is quite insane. And Bitcoin still quite holding up. But if we take a look at like net outflows, Bitcoin like outflow still positive. I think it's like 2 billion or something like that, but it's still positive. So it's quite surprising that Bitcoin is still down by 20%. But yeah, that's what Bitcoin does. It's very volatile asset. So
Right.
yeah,
I think the grayscale thing. I mean, I'm not an expert on the grayscale thing and the mechanics of it, but I know, at the time when they created it, it was innovative, right? It was a way to get around a spot ETF or a futures kind of asset. And they were innovative. They did their thing, and then they approved ETFs, and now they're kind of. I think it's a process of rolling out of the trust into the ETF, and then there was a discount on the trust, and I think it's just kind of tangled up and working itself out. But overall, I mean, if you zoom out, I mean, you look at that
yeah,
log chart of Bitcoin. This is going to look like when you look back, it's going to look
another
like this
lump. Yep,
little thing.
correction.
It's going to be yeah, it's going to look like not even a major correction. It's going to look like a little blip. But ETF, I think overall ETFs are a good thing. I mean, they're bringing in um, inflow. I mean, I think there's some positives and negatives to it. I don't think ETFs are gonna, they were saying like because people are investing in Bitcoin and the ETF that people are suddenly going to get into crypto and then all the other cryptos are going to explode.
Yep,
But when you think about it, it's just to a lot of people, it's just another asset that their fiduciary is investing in for them, right? They're not experiencing Bitcoin, right? They're investing in Bitcoin. They're not, opening a wallet or buying themselves, putting it in a wallet and moving it on chain and things like that, where you're getting that crypto experience or the Bitcoin experience. So I think maybe Ethereum with its ETF, if it has an ETF, and obviously Bitcoin will experience those inflows. The other cryptos will move around just because they normally do and they're speculative. But I don't know if there's going to be the amount of inflow going into these other things going into you know the other kinds of crypto, unless there's a big kind of mass
usually,
switch
yeah,
that happens with
usually
adoption.
cryptocurrencies and altcoins they follow Bitcoin's momentum, but sometimes
Right.
Bitcoin can go like 10x, they can go like 5x, or only a minor of them can outperform Bitcoin through like multiple cycles. But
Right.
yeah, so yeah, that's why I would prefer Bitcoin over any like other altcoins. What about you?
Oh yeah. I mean, look. I mean, if you were a wizard, you could predict like that altcoin, that shitcoin that goes from
Solana.
10 cents to $3. I mean, yeah. If you're a wizard, you could do that and you'd make 1,000x. There's going to be, there's going to be these all the. I mean, it's amazing. Like when you look online, every minute there's like, oh, the next Bitcoin that's going to make it, the next Bitcoin that's going to explode. It's just going to explode. I mean, it's silly. I mean,
This is not a
it's just
Bitcoin.
it's not Bitcoin. It's just it's gonna go to it could do 1,000x, but like good like how much you can invest in a coin like that, right? I mean,
Right.
you know with Bitcoin, I mean, I think another thing these inflows are doing compared to the other cryptos is it could create stability, right? You're gonna have less volatility the more money that comes into Bitcoin, and not only more money that's coming into Bitcoin, but the kind of money that's coming into Bitcoin. It's it's assets that are you know like hedge like funds that are coming into it, potentially
Right.
retirement funds down the road. This is not money that's like buying and selling on a daily basis and speculating and like a degen trading kind of thing. This is like long term holding. So
Yep.
I think that's gonna create some stability in the Bitcoin market and
Yep.
safety, for that matter.
Going back to volatility, and that Bitcoin is down by 20% in the past was since Bitcoin spot ETF was approved. And I actually was listening to Peter Schiff, a podcast, and he said that yeah, according to Wall Street and Modern Finance, if the price is down by 20%, it's officially bear market. But then if you take a look at the 2023 volatility, Bitcoin has been three times down by 20, 25, 27%. So I'm thinking what Bitcoin has been in the bear market three times in 2023. So this is personally, I think volatility is just one of the feature of Bitcoin, and there is nothing you can do. Like personally, I do not mind volatility because I do not think volatility is necessarily a risk. But if you're like trading with leverage, yes, it is risk. But if you're hodling
Right.
that, volatility is just a feature. What do you think
Yeah,
about it?
I mean, listen to just the best one of the best investors ever, Warren Buffett. Doesn't
Yeah,
He's obviously not a Bitcoin fan necessarily, but his philosophy, he loves volatility because he knows what he's investing in. So just like if you love Bitcoin, you believe in the thesis, you believe in it long term, you think it's a multi-decade investment that's going to go up a lot, and you believe in it, you want it to go down here and there because it gives you buying opportunities if you believe
yeah,
it, right? As long as it's not, as long as you don't think it's like a really speculative thing that's going to go to zero, like some of these hard, smaller coin cryptos, those could literally go to zero and you can lose all your money.
yeah.
Yes, that could happen with Bitcoin. It's less unlikely now, but if you really believe in it long term, I mean, I'm not crying that it's going down. I mean, I'm not going to be I'm not a hater. I like it. I actually want it to go down. I mean, if it went down to 20,000, come on, what would you do if it went down to
Yeah,
20,000?
buy more.
Would you sell your Bitcoin? No,
Of
right?
course not.
Right. So, it's for traders and short-term traders who are looking for these quick up and downs. It doesn't matter that it's Bitcoin or any other asset. You want this, you know, you actually like the volatility,
Volatility, right?
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah,
Volatility creates opportunities, but not for some people.
totally,
But yes,
totally.
yeah. So let's move on. So let me ask you a
Yeah.
question. Why Bitcoin? Why not gold or some other assets or whatever?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's exclusive. I'm not 100%. I mean, I don't invest 100% in Bitcoin. I think um, it's a awesome asset. I believe in it. I've studied it. It's one I've probably studied more than others just because. But there's nothing wrong with gold. I mean, gold's time tested. It's a more physical form of Bitcoin, I guess you could call it.
Yeah,
There's other companies that make sense. You can invest in the markets if you want. I mean, um, it's not, it's like I said, it's for me, it's an investable asset. I really like it. I dabbled in other crypto assets a little bit, but not to I think Bitcoin's by far percentage wise more of what I'm involved in, and from crypto. But I think there's other long term assets that are good too.
yep,
Brands, like I
for
said,
sure.
it's brands, right? Like think of brands like Coca-Cola. I mean, these are like whether you drink Coke or not,
It's
like the brand is
a
like in your head,
recognizable
right?
brand. Yep.
Right. So companies like that. I mean, they're tremendous infrastructure, you know, tremendous brand. I mean, they could do amazing things.
Right. Personally, for me, I also came from like a value investing background. I studied Warren Buffett a lot, Charlie Munger, and many other investors. And first, I came into Bitcoin like early 2017. I dismissed it, but then because like Warren Buffett like distinguishes between speculation and volatility back then, according to Warren Buffett, it was clearly a speculative asset. But then the more and more I study, I realize that Bitcoin has like strong fundamentals. It's decentralized, and most importantly, it has the strongest property rights. Nobody will be able to take away Bitcoin from you unless like they put the gun to your head or something like that. But even then, you can tell like I don't know my private keys, or maybe my private keys is some other countries, and so I think yeah, this is the reason why I think like Bitcoin for me is like number one assets compared to any other assets. And
Yeah.
moving forward, like what do you think about Bitcoin versus gold? Like where do you think like what is better asset or what is better money? What would you say?
Oh, but I mean, I think when you just look at it from a perspective of, properties, I mean, Bitcoin, I think, edges out gold just because of
Properties,
it's
yep.
the ability to move it, its ability, it's more liquid. You can
Divisible.
actually, yeah, you can actually own I mean, you can own bars of gold. It's more difficult to do and to store, and I think makes you, um, it puts your wealth at sort of risk. You're not going to bury these things in your backyard probably, but Bitcoin has all these properties that allow. When you think of like, you know, your ancestors, not even long-term ancestors, like even just in the last 100 and 200 years, you always see people like fleeing countries and for their lives, right, and their families' well-being, fleeing oppressive regimes and things like that, and they leave their wealth behind, right?
Yep.
There's just no way, this is a method of doing it. It is a property. It's a way. Also, when you think about it, it combines as an investment. It combines growth. It combines like the whole Metcalfe's law of and S curve of adoption. I mean, it kind of consolidates all these things. It's an interesting. It must be interesting for newer investors to kind of like be exposed to this now. It's just like because it didn't exist before. Like this is all people know when you think about
Yep.
it. People are coming to age. Younger investors. They're like, oh, there's Bitcoin. Okay, it just is, right? And then when you say if you ask them like, what do you think of gold or Bitcoin? You're like, well, they're just going to look at it. Well, Bitcoin has all these like they're going to look at it from a very different perspective, which is why I think
From a
the
digital
future
perspective, yeah.
generations, yeah, are gonna accept it much more because it's just part of it'll be part of their psyche.
Right. Yeah, boomers is not easy to convince them because they, for many years, they got used to like physical things like gold or some properties. But if you tell them about Bitcoin, you say it's digital, they're gonna say like it's digital, it has no value. But in reality, they just do not understand why it has a value. And yeah,
Yeah,
Bitcoin is very valuable, and of course, as properties, is divisible, portable. It has a storehold of wealth, of course, similar to gold. But if you take a look at the gold, before gold became money, it was a collectible. And in 2017, we had this war of blocks where Roger Wish he wanted to basically take, say, like Bitcoin Cash, say as a Bitcoin because of has bigger block, it's more transactionable. But for something to be money, it has to be storehold of wealth first before become like a portable mean of exchange. What do you think about that?
yeah. I mean, it has to. I mean, like you said, it used. I think gold. I mean, gold originally was used. I mean, we're talking. I mean, how many thousands of years it's been? Everybody has different numbers, but its value came from its rarity, right? It's rare. It's that term sound money. I think that came from the
Gold, yeah.
sound it would make when you drop it, like
Coin, yeah.
right? It has these different properties that it used to be there was no computers back when. It's all physical world. So it had to have that rarity. Everybody talks about gold's utility. Yeah, it has utility, but I don't know what percentage of its value is wrapped up in its just belief of its store of value. And and the scarcity is obviously Bitcoin scarcity is one of its main properties. It's built-in scarcity that gold sort of has. I mean, technologically, it's probably like it became more technically because of technology, we've probably been able to mine more gold,
Yeah.
but relative to the whole world kind of
I
getting
think
bigger and more advanced. So it's kind of proportional, I think.
Yeah, current gold's annual inflationary supply is about like 1.5%, but I think Elon Musk said that, or somebody else said that they can mine gold from asteroids in space, which is kind of
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
We-
Well, when you think about it, once you start, I mean, that destroys that asset. I mean, once you start making it in a lab, like they can make diamonds in labs now,
Yep.
right? So I mean, it's like once you can just make it, then it just,
Yeah.
it will kill its store of value
Store
property. It'll
value. Yep.
just inflate it. It'll just inflate it, just like the dollar. But I mean, when you look at that, I don't have it on hand, but when you look at that, like the graph of the M2 money supply, that's the total money supply that's available, including CDs saving accounts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, all the paper cash out there. Um, Gold pretty much, it's just an inflation hedge, right? It just
Right.
pretty much follows it. Bitcoin right now, I think Bitcoin eventually will just kind of get tighter and tighter to that curve because it will become more stable. But right now, it's like shooting through the moon. You can't even see the graph when you pit it against the M2 because
If
it's so
you if you
you
take a
know
look at 1971 when United States went off of gold standard, since then I think M2 went up by 10% per annum, and gold also increased by 10% per annum. So gold is as barely as just inflation hedge, nothing more than that.
that's it. But I mean, at least it's something, right?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
something. Yeah,
if you're holding it in dollars, you're really losing. I mean, it's true. You just look at that graph. You're like, I mean, you go back just to like 2016. I don't know. I think I created a little calculator once where I'm like, what's where if I put in the price of something now and I see what of an asset, for example, and you just see it's like 30% based on the 2016 or something like that, where it's been inflated. So
right.
I mean, that just tells you. I mean, that's a crazy. I mean, COVID was a big thing where they printed a ton of money, and it had its reasons, and it I
Yeah,
guess you could say we evaded some bad times that could have happened in the market. So in that sense, I guess something worked, but it's all just kicking the can down the road. I mean, everybody
right.
knows that. You
And
know,
additionally, I think since 2011, when gold reached $2,000, and now it just reached $2,000 again 13 years later, while inflation probably a triple since that point on, which is quite insane. So in the past 13 years, gold failed to be like a hedge against inflation. Doesn't mean it will fail in the future, but it just means that it failed in the past. So at the same time, Bitcoin like skyrocketed from like I don't know like few cents all the way to like $40,000. So I
yeah.
think it's clear what is the fastest horse in the race.
What? Something that's really interesting I thought about with Bitcoin. I was listening to, I think I was listening to a podcast or I read it. There's a guy. You familiar with John Mersheimer? He's like a, he's like this,
Not sure.
he's like this well-known international relations guy, scholar out of I think University of Chicago. And but he said something pretty interesting, which was like talking about anarchy, but like in a really pure sense. Like you have hierarchies, which are like governments, like for example, like a hierarchy is like there's towns, there's counties, there's states, obviously there's countries, but after countries, who's above countries? Like who do you go to appeal things? And that's his theory is that that's the basis of why why countries hoard and try to accumulate power and money and wealth and then military, right? Ultimately defend all their to defend their position essentially because there's nobody higher, right? Like you could say the UN is higher, but it's
UN,
not
yeah,
really, right?
right.
But I was thinking about that in the context of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, I think, is pure anarchy. And I don't mean that like when you think of anarchy, you think of like chaos and, people going nuts and bedlam, but that's not what I mean. I mean lack of hierarchy, meaning it's like a pure form of anarchy in the sense that unlike countries, it doesn't need a higher authority. Its system itself is its higher authority.
Right.
So in that sense, can you name? I can't think of anything else that has that property, right? And I think it's power. Also, I think it's its threat. Like that's a big threat to other countries, right? I mean, to have this thing that's spread around the world that you can't hold and grasp, and I think it's a geopolitical threat to people because it doesn't need anybody else, anything else, or any other entity to appeal to, right? It appeals to itself. It's self-contained anarchy. I know
Right.
that's a
So
weird. thing. But
the first country that adopts Bitcoin will win eventually. And yes, we can see El Salvador as doing that. They adopted Bitcoin, I believe, back in 2020, so it's been almost 4 years. And I think they just recently broke even, but since then, yeah, Peter Schiff has been bashing El Salvador and MicroStrategy. But since then, El Salvador's GDP literally skyrocketed because of Bitcoin adoption, and of course, his president Nayib Bukele is doing great things. They reduce gangs over there. They
yeah,
increase tourists and so on and so forth. So yeah, El Salvador is definitely winning in my eyes.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of like a lab experiment. And these, I mean, no offense to the small countries. I mean, it's not a big country is not going to suddenly. U.S. is not going to do that right away.
Yep.
China's not going to do that right away. It's going to be these small test cases in countries that are doing it, and that's great for them. I heard something pretty interesting. The one thing about El Salvador was that it already was denominated. It already was using dollars,
Yep.
right? Before it didn't have its own currency. So if so, the U.S. didn't like mind as much. I mean, look, U.S. and the world powers are the world powers. I don't know if like I don't. I think they're still going to be. They're not going to like just willy nilly just say, here you go, goodbye dollar, hello Bitcoin. I mean,
Right.
they're
Yeah.
just not going to do that. I mean, we have U.S. has extreme the country with the reserve currency has extreme power. Obviously, there's challenges to that. If you read Ray Dalio's book about what's that one, the most recent one about debt cycles
That's it. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
his and a historical perspective. I mean, it kind of history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. But it rhymes pretty strongly a lot of the time with these countries that have reserve currencies and then lose it for all kinds of reasons, for very similar reasons, because humans are humans, and eventually there's disparities, which we're starting to see a lot more of. We're starting to see a lot of more military uprisings around the world. Middle East, Africa, Ukraine, and Russia. I mean, and we're involved in a lot of these proxy wars, and foreign wars cost a lot of money, and
Yep.
that has brought down a lot of other civilizations. Look at, I mean, even the Roman Empire, became complacent and dependent in multiple ways on their foreign satellite areas, and that can be weak. And then everybody falls in the same thing. We think, oh, we could just print money forever, and right, and just be like, oh yeah, let's print some money,
Not
and
gonna happen.
right. I mean, they're not stupid. They know they know how this whole thing works. No one. It's impossible to pay back all the debt, and every country kind of is playing the same game. We all know that, but it's like I don't know what's the game. Duck Duck Goose. No, what's the game? Musical chairs, right?
I'm just.
Someone, right? You keep going until, and then someone's left out at the end. It's kind of like that, and we keep printing. Eventually, and the idea is that people are keep buying our debt. But what happens when people stop buying our debt? What happens when they start being like, oh, let's trade more in these other currencies. Let's use Bitcoin. I mean, it could be any other currency, and we're starting to see that more and more. And it's just a very big macro perspective of the world.
Yep. China
Yeah,
already started buying U.S. debt not too long ago, but according to yeah, I totally agree with Ray Dalio that civilization goes in cycle. One civilization will be stronger than others. It will dominate the world. But he stated that China will be like next in
right.
line. However, I do not think. I mean, it's possible, but because of China's totalitarian regime similar to Russia, I think it will be very hard for Chinese currency become as a world reserve currency and other countries to believe China because they can literally with the click wipe you off with their system. I mean, United States does similar, but at least United States a little bit more like democratic country than China at least.
Yeah, I mean I mean China. I mean if you in that you're totally right. He does think China. If you look, I mean I can picture the graphs he created where the U.S. is going down and
Right? Yeah, yeah,
China's
yeah.
coming up, and he does see that as the next wave. I mean, who knows if that's going to play out like that? I mean, China has its faults as well. I mean, look. I mean, we're what a 250 some odd year democracy. Um, it's there's no guarantee. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is I think it was Benjamin Franklin when he was I don't know. This is probably this may or may not have happened, but it's been quoted where he's walking out of the Constitutional Convention or when they signed a declaration, and someone asked him, what kind of what kind of government did we create? And he said a democracy if you could keep it,
Yep.
right? He knew, and they all knew that it would take. It's not just like let's create this democracy and hunky dory, everybody's happy for eternity. It takes work every every generation, every day takes work to keep up that belief in the democracy and the unity. And I mean, I'm not being a pessimist. I mean, we're seeing that break up pretty strongly politically. We're seeing it break up economically. You're seeing much wider disparities in class than we ever have, and that's not a good path. I mean, even just to tie back to even dental practice, like I, it's weird. Like it's a very it's a people oriented business, and you see people on a daily basis. Your people in your community, and you could tell when you wouldn't even have to watch any news or anything. You could tell when the economy's good and when the economy's
Yep.
bad, based on when people are like, oh yeah, let's fix that or let's wait. And I started my practice in '05, and it was right before '08, and there were times where the middle class just felt really strong, and then it just started to just chip away until there was very little feeling of a middle class where people are just couldn't afford anything anymore. And
Right. Yep.
business, you have to be able to pay your bills and everything. So
Yeah, right now, even if you look at the Constitution, fiat currency is not constitutional because in Constitution clearly states that the only money can be is gold and silver or currency backed by gold and silver, and of course, it's no longer the case. But additionally, if you look at, for example, some people argue that right now we are much richer than we were back in the past. However, for example, in 1930s, like average house was at around $4,000, and average salary for the man was around $2,000. So basically, within 2 years of your salary, you can afford the house. And right now,
right,
average house will like around $400,000, and average salary like 60K. So you need to work like a few decades to be able to afford the house, which is insane.
totally. I mean, it's and it's so glaring. I mean, you just talk to your friends. You're a younger guy. You talk to your friends. I mean, you could see it. They make good livings, and they're like, oh,
Yep.
I still can't afford a house. Not only that, you could see. There was the movie. You ever see? It's a Roger and Me. It's
Yeah,
Michael
sure.
Moore's movie. He went. I think it was many years ago. It was one of his earlier movies, but it was about how he was from Detroit and how Ford General Motors used to be it's the biggest thing there. It basically built Detroit, and the average worker there, back when years ago, not maybe in like the '60s, '70s when Michael Moore was growing up, someone who's working on an assembly line, they could afford to send their kids to school. They could afford
Yep.
to go on vacations and live a life, right?
Afford the
And
house.
just
Yep.
to speak to exactly what you're saying, right? Afford a house, and that was on just a worker's salary, right? And it's just not even close to, it's not even near close to that anymore. And it's, um, yeah, I think it's a product also of the baby boomer generation where that's the huge amount of people that are at an older age that are, that have a lot of money and a lot of wealth. And, the whole idea of, you know, not not through government means necessarily transferring wealth, but just in terms of, the natural kind of transfer of wealth over time.
Right.
It's going to happen, but it's just right
Yeah,
now it's
and in reality, people were supposed to get richer because of technology. Technology is deflationary force. For example, let's say in 1900s, I could, let's say, pick strawberries with my hands. It will be very labor intensive work. But if I invented a machine that can pick the strawberries much faster, then the cost of strawberries should be much cheaper. So now, like if you compare, let's say, take anything, like it's way more expensive now than it was back like a few years ago, which is like insane.
yeah. I mean, well, I think right now it's going to be on that point you just made is going to be on steroids because of AI. Like AI is going to potentially make things. It's funny. Like you think like when you think of like the king of any country in the Middle Ages, right? They were living like at a factor probably like you would never want to even think about living right now, right? We're living like a billion times better than the King of England lived in the Middle Ages. But
You
it's
mean
all
arbitrary?
relative to where you are, right, you're relative to where what you're existing. We could have this amazing technology that's doing all this work for us, but I think also these things remove. It's a hit and miss. I'm not going to say, like, I'm not a anti AI person or anything like that, but there are other. I'm not a Skynet. I'm not, Skynet. I don't see Skynet happening necessarily, but there are, aligned kind of risks to that. And I'm referencing. Do you know Skynet? I'm referencing. I'm a big movie guy, so that's a
Not
Terminator
sure.
reference.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure. They basically, took over the world and destroyed humanity. But so that everybody kind of uses that as a go-to sometimes.
Oh, Skynet?
Skynet. It's when people say Skynet, they mean like the AI takes over and destroys
Ah,
humanity.
oh, okay.
But I don't think necessarily we're looking at that. But I think like there could be huge advances in medicine. The genomics is a big
Yep.
thing I look into a lot. I think that's gonna, like, when you think about, even, I don't mean to diverge into medicine, but when you think about medicine in terms of where we've been, it's all been, let's just make medicines to help uh, create relief for diseases, right? They're just treating
Right.
the symptoms of the diseases, but we're not, like, when you think about it, what have we like what has been cured? Can you think of one thing that's been cured? Like, nothing's actually been cured, and I think that's where AI, genomics, can really cure things. I think people say curing cancer is like this, like, impossible thing. No, so if you can manipulate the genome, I mean, it's purely a genetic disorder. If you can manipulate the genome to not
Something else.
create cancer cells and stop the growth of, and you can do these things. So that's coming down the line, hopefully. But then again, you're making a point that you're like, what's purpose also? Like, you have to have purpose to wake up every day. If everything's done for you, like, what do you do, right?
Right.
So I think, throughout history, here, just to give you, I don't mean to get off on a rant here, but like Warren Buffett, like, he had, I was watching something he said, or read something he said, so he made a really good point. He said, if you were alive during the Industrial Revolution, just at the beginning of the 20th century, you would have been like, uh, what are people going to do? Like, they're not going to be on the fields anymore, they're not going to be on the farms and all this stuff. You just don't know. Like, you're not going to be riding horses. Like, you're just like, what are people going to do? But look, it worked out, right? We just kept advancing, and I think that will happen, right? We're going to keep on. Look, I mean, you have a channel, you're doing a pod. I mean, this thing didn't. You could, when you were born, you didn't say, I want to be a podcast. I'm gonna start a podcast or a channel, a YouTube channel, right? There just didn't exist, and like, you're gonna see that more and more. Like, just to go back to like the working in a factory, you know, uh, 50 years ago, your whole career could be working in the Ford factory or the GM factory, right? And that's your whole career. No complaints. You had a good life. You had raised your family. You went on vacations. No, no, but the chances of this generation, or even me, like, I'm not doing it either. I'm advancing, evolving my career, doing different things. I love that aspect of it, but the idea of, you don't know what's coming next. Like, every 5 years, like, someone in college now might not even know, or high school might not even know, like there'll be careers and jobs around that don't even exist right now.
Right. Yep.
So, but hopefully Bitcoin will.
No, but I build on your point. Yes, 100% agree with you that technology makes everybody's life easier. However, yes, if you show, for example, iPhone to your grandparents back in 1990s or whatever, they will be very delighted and very happy that this technology existed. However, if you look in 1990s or whatever, uh, those people's life was much more affordable than it is right now. And why is that? Just because of Federal Reserve and like endless money printing. That's why.
You're totally right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess, well, there's that generation in the '90s who are adults are actually doing okay, because they're the boomers, right? They were the ones
Yep.
investing. They had a good run during the 20th century. I mean, a lot of bad things happened in the 20th century, but in terms of American growth and prosperity, I mean, that boomer generation, I mean, from a wealth perspective, has done pretty well, and that's where a lot of the wealth is right now, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I totally agree with you. With what you're saying. Um, yeah,
Yeah, hopefully
life's crazy.
Bitcoin will fix this. And yeah, for the past 14 years since Bitcoin has been in the market, it seems like it is fixes this. I would say more rapidly than slowly because Bitcoin literally skyrocketed from like, as I said earlier, from like a few cents all the way to $40,000. But at the same time, inflation for the past like 100 years also skyrocketed probably like 100x or even more. So yeah, I have like a lot of hope in Bitcoin, and I really hope that like Bitcoin will like take over the world. Maybe not next year, but maybe in a decade or 2 decades. And I
Yeah,
think
it'd be cool if it was the like the Bitcoin standard, the big if it was the reserve currency kind of thing of the world. Um, I think so, I go back and forth on that sometimes because I'm like it's I think a lot of people would want that, but I'm thinking like would a country be like would is a country going to release their world like the U.S. is not going to voluntarily release their world
let me
current
answer that.
yeah, go ahead.
So when I read Jeff Booth, are you familiar with Jeff Booth? Like
Sure, yeah, yeah.
his book Price of Tomorrow. I was actually very struggling that in deflationary environment, people will have no incentive to spend. Like for example, if my money worth more tomorrow than it is today, why would I buy this coffee or why would I buy the car or TV if my money worth more in the next 10 years, right? But look, for example, like iPhone or TV, how much was the iPhone, let's say a phone like 20 years ago? It was a few $1,000s. And right now, iPhone with much better technology is like less than $1,000 and it's less expensive and people still buy, right?
Yeah, no, I mean inflation is just a product of a bad system. I
Yeah.
don't think right. It's the fault of the system that drives the inflation and then drives up prices. I mean, prices are just relative to the value, like you said, the value of the money. So I think whether if you take out if I mean just to speak to what you said about about your the incentive to spend. I mean, I think it's bad that the system pushes people to be consumers, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
the privilege to this. I mean, it's great that when and I hate it when politicians refer to the U.S. citizens as consumers. Like that's all we are. Like as if that's what you are to me. Like that's all I am to you is just someone who buys this crap.
Yep.
Like that's and that speaks to like the philosophy of their system, right? They're promoting that. That's the system they created where it promotes you to spend because of exactly what you said, because your money's worth less, and it actually pushes you
To spend
uh,
money.
to spend money, also to take
Yep.
debt, which
Yep.
pushes their system, which is a positive feedback loop to their
Right.
system. The more debt, the more borrowing, the more money printing. It's just like so that is the system that was created, and that's there.
It's flawed. Yeah.
Um, but I don't think the fact that my money's worth more tomorrow than it is today will stop me from purchasing something I believe I want,
Yeah,
right? I
exactly.
mean,
Yep. You,
I don't think that. I mean, that's just
yeah,
desire to buy
yeah, a
things,
few things. You need to eat. You're gonna buy food regardless. You need to have a shelter. You're gonna live somewhere. You're probably going to have like a car or some sort of transportation.
Absolutely.
You're
I'm
gonna
still going
spend
to buy
money on
my
that. Yeah,
iPhone. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's. I think it's just the system that was created, and the idea that um, like I don't like the idea that you're earning money with your hands, doing like even a dentist or anybody. There's plenty of people that work with their hands, not working with their hands, earning money with their intellect, doing things. You're doing your YouTube channel, like you're working, like you're putting effort in. You're using your intellectual property. You're using your mind. You're developing things, and you earn that money, right? That money, whatever you earn is in your pocket, and you've earned that. And the idea that it's just being degraded because it's sitting there. Like you should be able to bury it in your backyard and have it maintain its value. I mean, that's the idea of gold. You earned your gold, and now it's maintaining its value over time. I mean, I think that is a really important thing. Did you ever read the? I mean, it's been referenced a lot, and there are elements of the book I'm not like super crazy about. But did you read the book Creature from Jekyll Island?
I heard about it, but I did not read it. No.
It's an interesting read. I could tell you which parts to kind of like skip, but the history aspects of it, assuming it's I have to look more into the history, but assuming the history that's referenced is true, it's about the creation of the Fed, and the Fed is really not federal at all. Like there's nothing
Exactly.
federal about the Fed, right?
It's
It's a
private.
it's a private company. It's as if it's as if Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. No, Steve Jobs not around anymore, but it's as if these big wigs in
Steve Cook.
industry got together, created a cartel, and then got the government to approve their cartel and made it policy. That's exactly what happened, but it was for banking, right? These big banks got together, created the Fed to benefit banks, basically to bail out banks when times are when they run into trouble. And
Yep.
then they went to the government and just basically created lobbied in the government with all their money, and the government basically put into policy the Fed to regulate all these things that they do, which which benefits the banks. I mean, it's purely a banking.
Yep.
And I say cartel. I don't mean they're evil necessarily. It's just what
Right.
was created. That's what created the system. So the system is to bail out
Banks.
is to,
Yeah.
like when banks are bailed out, don't be surprised.
Exactly.
That is the system, right? That's
Yeah.
that, and it's not even secret. That is the system.
Yeah, JP Morgan had a big influence on a central bank. But yeah, even if you go to like central bank website, you can see that they are paying like dividends. They used to be like 6% per annum. I'm not too sure how much is it right now, but clearly somebody's receiving that 6%, and who's receiving is some private investors. So
Oh
no,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean it is the system. Like everybody's like speculates sometimes about like how the system is evil or people are evil in the system. It's look, they got a job at a bank, right? Their job is to make the bank big. Like with
but
these ETFs, right? And I wrote this on a couple of posts. I said, you can't like I don't hate Larry Fink. Larry Fink is boomed uh, BlackRock like crazy. I mean, and their pure product is charging fees on these ETFs that they created, and people like them. It's just like selling iPhones. Apple's worth a lot because people buy a lot of iPhones. So you know, I don't hate any of these people for doing for
but
what their
that
job is,
that's
right?
their job, and they like do not understand like the basis of the job. But anyway, yeah, we can bash United States a lot, but if you look at the other countries like Argentina, Zimbabwe, Turkey, they have like really hyperinflation, and even United States with this official CPI like 3.2% is still like much lower than other countries. But
Totally, and
yeah,
I mean, that's the benefit of controlling the reserve currency. I mean, we have power in that with our reserve currency, and it's a, it's just a powerful position to be in. I think we easily could run into problems that these other countries are running into if we weren't the reserve currency, right? I mean,
exactly, yep.
we just have a lot of economic power in the world, a lot of political power, and that's just the status of where we are right now. And like, I never for a second feel I love the country. I love this country. Born here, grew up here. It's given me a ton. Like I can't, if I was, if you're born any place else, it could be rough, and a lot of it is a product of that. Like that's another thing Warren Buffett said. He said
Yep. I was
he's
about
Warren
to say
Buffett because
that.
he was born a white man
In
in
America.
1930. If you're not born a white male uh,
In America.
in America, you
Huge
probably didn't have a
disadvantage.
big
Yep.
leg up, right? A big disadvantage.
Yep.
So, you can't discount any of those things. We're extremely lucky where we're born. I know you were born somewhere else and you came here, but you did come here,
Right.
right? That was great. You take opportunities and luck, I guess, sort of creates opportunities sometimes,
Right.
right?
Yep. The good thing about United States, it invites a lot of like immigrants, and then eventually immigrants contribute to GDP, and that's one of the reasons why America, where it is today, compared to, let's say, other countries that actually it's not that they close their access to the country, just nobody wants to go there.
Yeah, I mean, like it or not, people always are. I mean, a lot of countries have become Americanized in their philosophy of innovation. I mean, that was America's thing, right? Not to say that the rest of the world didn't innovate, because it did over centuries, but U.S. created I mean, it's good and bad. Like I've actually, this is very big picture, but like, U.S. is the culture is very individualistic, right? When you go to other countries like Japan or some Asian societies, it's very
Conservative.
community based.
Right.
Yeah, it's and that's not a bad. I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just and there are definite negatives to being individualistic like America is. I think it hurts all kinds of aspects of people's lives, right? It creates loneliness potentially. It creates all these things. I think it creates somewhat of ageism, like in a sense, like we devalue, other countries will value the wisdom of an older society, whereas U.S. is all about like the youthful innovation in Silicon Valley kind of thing. And I'm not here to like say it's good or bad. I'm just saying it like it is. But that breeds a lot of innovation, and it invites people, especially younger people, to come here and make it right. I mean, it just creates that canvas to paint on from an innovation perspective. And I think that's yeah, like you're totally right. I mean, think about some of our biggest innovations in history in the United States. Probably, I don't know if the majority of them were, but large amount were done by immigrants. I mean, everybody's an immigrant, really, when you think about it, in the United States.
Yep. All right, so let's move back to Bitcoin. We got them 5 minutes left. So, yeah, what do you think is going to happen to Bitcoin like in the next couple of years?
Well, I mean, it's really hard to it's really hard to speculate on price and
Right.
movement
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But look. I mean, I believe in it. I like the ethos of Bitcoin. I think I hope it's gonna over time it's gonna go up. I'm thinking in terms of like multi-decade, not like day to day. So very macro kind of investment. So over time, I think it's gonna go up. I think it's gonna take time for more inflow. Like when people are saying like, you look all over the internet and people are just like, it's going to go to 300, 500,000, $1 million, and that's great. I mean, that'd be great if that happened. But when you think about it, like I think I said sent you something once about
Hmm.
the multiples, right?
Right. Diminish rate of
Per
returns. Yeah.
cycle, right? The diminishing multiple over cycles, and it's gone. But with the interesting thing I saw was it's going down by whole numbers. So like it went, the second cycle, whatever, 2012 on. So the first one was diminishment by uh,
100x,
uh, right. It was 3, and then 4, and then
33x, and then
right, and then the next one in that
8x.
cycle would be 5, which if you work backwards would be from the halving a 1.6 times multiple, and the diminishing multiple makes a ton of sense, just from a logic perspective, because the bars of liquidity, the bars you need to get to in the market cap are so much higher, right?
Yep,
We're talking,
that's true.
it was pretty easy early, not easy, but it was much easier early on. Like these lower priced coins, like how hard is it for it to
Yeah, you can pump them hard.
quadruple?
Yep.
Yeah, it goes 100, so it goes from $1 million market cap to
Billion.
even a $300 million market cap. That's 300x. That could happen because it's $300 million. When we're talking about trillions, we're talking about the full value of assets like gold, and so that bar is just so high. I think it's going to take time to get there. The only way I mean, this is purely a product of market cap. Is the only way is for market cap to go up in an asset that has a fixed supply from a price perspective is inflow and adoption, right?
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's just it just is. So I think it'll take some time to do that. So you're looking at, I mean, it really depends on what it is at the halving. So say it was 60,000 at the halving or something, then you're looking at about a 96,000, $100,000 Bitcoin, something like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
but
but if you also look at the like technical um, market mechanism, like price is set at the margin. So I think according to Bank of America research, they said every dollar invested in Bitcoin, the market cap will increase by $118, which is quite insane. So let's say $100 million invested in Bitcoin, the market cap increased by what was it, 10 trillion, which is quite
yeah, I
insane.
mean,
I don't
yeah,
know if
there's
this is true,
multiple.
but that's what they said.
I don't know. You gonna listen to Bank of America? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know they're whatever. I mean, look, everybody, there's really smart people, much smarter, much smarter than you and me, who are
Yep.
making these analysis. Kathy Wood making some really big, analysis, but she also says like she sees it by 2030 being, she's projecting
Really?
out. Yeah, right. So I mean that, yeah, maybe. But
I
like,
hope so.
yeah, I mean, right. I mean, we hope so, but I mean, as long as you're if you still believe in it, and I mean, it doesn't change your strategy, right? I mean, your strategy is still the same.
Yep.
You believe in it the same. Nothing's changed that. You're looking for lower numbers to buy into and hold. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the main strategy. Just
The
take a
moral of
breath.
the story: do not sell your Bitcoin.
Don't sell your Bitcoin. One other little piece of advice, if I'm going to give a piece of advice, would be, and this is to mitigate yourself, to control your own self, is um, self custody. I mean, obviously, if
Yeah.
you're investing in ETF, you don't have that option. But if you can self custody and cold storage in a way that doesn't that's not super at your fingertips to act right away. It'll control your impulsivity if you see something happen, right? Because then you can't just like quickly go on your phone and go boom, send or trade,
Right.
because you have to go to your cold storage. If it builds that like waiting period in and controls your impulsivity, that can like mitigate
Right. And
yourself.
additionally, what I would add to that advice, just know what you own, because like if you know what you own, even if Bitcoin drops by 30%, you will not sell.
Yeah, and don't trade on don't borrow to trade, because you're going to end up with, just take mitigated risk and think of. I mean, if you're gonna, it's tough to put all your money in Bitcoin and be smart about it. You don't want to lose and have a long
Right.
term perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Dan, so we came to the end. So where can people find you online?
I'm not, you can find me on Twitter, otherwise known as X. Actually just made it, it's at Dr. Dan Fab, so at Dr. Dan Fab, or LinkedIn, and happy to talk.
I will leave all the links in the description box below. Dan, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. What's up, guys?
Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Dan Faber. You can find Dan Faber at this Twitter account. If you guys have any questions, shoot me an email or message me directly on Twitter account. Thank you guys so much for watching.